many of us find ourselves attracted to emotionally unavailable people, and not just once. Sometimes it's a repetition, it's a repeated theme in your life. And how can I put this nicely? It's a real shitstorm when you're dealing with somebody where you feel that your purpose is to extract some kind of emotional feedback from them that's satisfying to you, but you can never quite get there. But nevertheless, you find yourself attracted to these people. You feel this pull towards these people, and it causes you distress. But you continue the same cycle. If you end one relationship with one person of that nature, you find yourself in a soon to be another relationship with somebody of a similar nature. And obviously it's not, it's, if you think why that's happening, it's more a matter, it's more a reflection of you than the other person. And you might wonder why, if this kind of fits your profile, you might wonder why do you find yourself attracted to emotionally unavailable people? And I think in most cases it really does go back to childhood and the way you were raised. If you have parents, I mean, this is the key. If you have caregivers, usually your caregivers are your parents. If one or both parents were not emotionally available to you growing up, if they didn't give you the kind of feedback that you needed to have healthy emotional development, then you would have lacked that emotional intimacy with your parents, and you would have spent a lot of time trying to get it, but maybe you never quite did. It never did come in a way that was healthy for you or the way you wanted. And obviously that affected your development and personality more broadly as you grew, as you entered into adulthood. And such people who had this upbringing where emotional intimacy wasn't really abundant, you probably at some or many levels have a certain fear of intimacy. And it's that fear of intimacy that further drives, in many cases, an attraction towards emotionally unavailable people. Because if you were dealing with somebody who is emotionally available, it means you're creating that intimacy with them, which in turn means you get overwhelmed. You don't know how to deal with that because you never really had that. You grew up and you created all kinds of barriers and coping mechanisms to mitigate the impact of not having that that healthy emotional connection with your caregivers. And now that's just your familiar zone. And we are attracted to people who are familiar, people who remind us of people who were important to us earlier in our lives. It's mostly subconscious. It's subconscious, but it does drive a lot of your decision making and your choices. So when you see somebody and you can tell that they're emotionally distant or not emotionally open, that might be familiar, and B, that might almost feel safe. But then once you start getting into that kind of relationship with that person, this doesn't have to be just romantic, although that's, oftentimes it is romantic, but it can be other genres of a relationship. It can be friends, things like that. Once you get into that relationship, you find yourself wanting that intimacy, but scared of it at the same time. And then you're in this loop where you're attracted to the very thing which you most disliked in a way, but which is most familiar, and it's all that you really know how to deal with. But there is that part of you that thinks, maybe, just maybe, I can get my parents' love or my caregiver's love, get them to open up emotionally through this person. So there's this element sometimes of you trying to rectify your past through this new person you're dealing with. And when you're trying to rectify your past through this new person you're dealing with, you can oftentimes, cycle after cycle, you can try to get the person to become more intimate with you. emotionally, and it never really transpires in the way you so much want. Most of the time, or a lot of the time, these people are quite narcissistic, or can be psychopathic. This kind of emotional callousness, this emotional disregard for their people, this lack of real warmth. You see that a lot. But again, you're attracting that into your life because it's familiar. You fear intimacy yourself, and you're trying to fix your past trauma, if you would, your past, the unpleasant experience with your upbringers. You're trying to address all that through this new person as well. But the funny thing is, if you were to actually get the person to open up to you, and you would actually get what you're asking for, all of a sudden you might either lose interest in the person or become very fearful and run, because you're getting into that zone that you're not comfortable with. So it's all a form of trauma. It's all a form of maladaptation in terms of what you instinctively pursue. And oftentimes, the people who are attracted to you are also, they either share in very similar traits to you, in that they also, maybe they fear a certain level of intimacy, or maybe they're the inverse. Not the inverse, but they're very different but compatible in other ways. Because sometimes some people just need to have a partner or somebody in their life who's going to try to please them, to get that emotional feedback out of them. Sometimes people want that attention, that energy that you would expend on them, because sometimes, especially narcissists, they like people who will try to people please and try to people fix. So what I'm saying there is, sometimes people might be different to you, but they're compatible with the part of you that has that trauma. They're compatible with that for other reasons. So it really is, if you're constantly attracting unhealthy people, being people who are emotionally unavailable in particular, it just shows that you have things to work on. And let's just face it. A lot of us have different upbringings. Few of us will be. I think few people watching this video or any video would say, "Oh, I'm completely normal." That's, what is normal? Is there even such a thing? I personally don't. I struggle to identify with any concept of normality, although I do. I'm more in the terms of thinking, individuality. Everybody has their own personality. No two people are the same, but you do have certain margins where if people are kind of outside those margins, I guess they're transcending into the disordered front. But yeah, so it's not like you're gonna become normal if you try to work on yourself. But if you become conscious of why you behave in certain ways, and then it might be easier for you to kind of work on yourself. And sometimes people who come to your experience give you that opportunity to further self-reflect and to identify the areas you have to work on. And it's just making sure that those people who are kind of your mirror in a way, that I guess you make the best of it, in a sense, of yourself. Like, how does this experience, how is it going to enrich in me? How can I become a better person by learning these new things about myself? Yeah, interesting, this whole concept of individuality, and some people trying to be normal, but at the same time, trauma affecting us and the way we behave and carry ourselves.